All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, just like the Southwest, Big East, and Pac 12 conferences before them, all signs point to the Atlantic Coast Conference as the next big football conference to have uncertainty. The ACC is set to have a 17-team football league for the upcoming college football campaign and an 18-team league for basketball. But do not expect those membership numbers to remain in place that much longer. Florida State has already begun weighing their options to get out of the ACC's grant of rights. And like I've been saying for the past several months, do not think that the Seminoles are leaving this league by themselves. Today, Clemson filed a motion in Pickens County, South Carolina, as they are also questioning the ACC's grants of rights as well as the conference's exit fees. Now, this comes on the heels of the new 14-team college football playoff format that's going to pay out about $21 million per SEC school in comparison to 13 million for schools from the ACC. And now we just saw the new television deal for the college football playoff be announced today. And again, like I've been saying for the longest time, that gap between the haves and have-nots is going to continue to grow because you see what the Big Ten's getting, you see what the SEC's getting, and schools like a Florida State, like a Clemson, and the ACC are saying, "Hey, what about us?" It's just that growing disparity, and I keep talking about it between the SEC, the Big Ten, and everybody else in college football. I guarantee you this: within the next 5 years, possibly sooner, possibly much sooner, you are going to see both Clemson and Florida State in the SEC. Okay, it's that plain and simple. And if that is going to be the case, which more than likely I think it is going to happen, who else could leave the ACC as well? I think that people need to keep their eyes on North Carolina. I also think that people need to keep their eyes on Virginia as well, because these schools are sitting back and looking at things, and it's not just a matter of them wanting their piece of the pie, which their perceived piece of the pie. But then also, it could be one of those where, you know what, you want to get off of a sinking ship when it's still afloat. So, like I've been saying, and I've been saying this for a very long time, it's only a matter of time before we get a 20-team conference. The Big Ten's already okay at 18 this year. Now that SC, Oregon, UCLA, and Washington are set to join. You got the SEC that's about to be at 16 once Oklahoma and Texas officially join. And then, the Big 12 is going to be at 16 as well once Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado officially join that league as well. With that said, this looming exit of both Florida State and Clemson would clearly put the ACC behind the Big 12, in my opinion, as far as the pecking order goes, because clearly, the SEC and the Big Ten, if you want to call it that, they've basically called a truce. You know what? You've got, your squadron, I've got mine, and let's run college football, which they are basically doing now. This is why we have a 14-team playoff due to these power brokers. So, with that said, if and when the ACC loses these heavyweights, it's going to happen. How could the Atlantic Coast Conference counter? Well, first and foremost, I think the ACC is going to exhaust every, legal aspect for this. It's one of those where the Atlantic Coast Conference is clearly going to say, "Hey, listen, in our minds, if you're Florida State and Clemson, you guys signed ironclad contracts in these grants of rights." And this is what conferences tend to do. They have to leverage themselves as far as, schools looking to leave, because either you stay or if you leave, it's going to cost so much that it's going to persuade or dissuade people from leaving. But when it's all said and done, Florida State and Clemson are looking to get out of those, and I think somehow, some way they will, and I think there will be a happy median because it doesn't make sense to keep somebody around that don't want to play ball with you. It's going to be one of those where this is going to happen, but I could see the ACC trying to do what they've done before, which is in the past, they went to the Big East when the Big East had football. And now I think since the Big East no longer exists for football, they're going to go out there and try to see what they can get from possibly the American Athletic Conference. They've already gotten SMU to come on board. I think if this mass exodus from the ACC happens, and I do believe that it will, I think the ACC is probably going to try to hold things together by looking at a Tulane out of the American, looking at a Memphis out of the American, and also looking at a Temple out of the American as well. I think, Temple would help the ACC uh, contract wise for the Philadelphia market. I think it could be a boost to Temple because Temple, has been a fish out of water in the American in regards to their basketball program. At least Temple has never really been, a hotbed for football, but I think they have a market in Philadelphia that could help the ACC. And then at the same time, being in the ACC, I think could help Temple's basketball program, which has really taken a step back in the American. I know they made a run to the conference tournament championship game this past week, but still, Temple basketball has not been what it once was. Also, with the ACC, look to expand more out west, try to get some teams from the Mountain West, try to get Washington State and Oregon State on board. I mean, you already have Cal and Stanford, and you're going to try to piece this thing together in the attempts to survive. So I think if you're the ACC, you got to go all out to try to preserve what you have. Because again, like I said, Clemson and Florida State ain't staying around. And I guarantee you other schools are looking at them. I mentioned North Carolina. I mentioned Virginia, possibly an NC State, possibly a Miami, wanting to get in on a bigger piece of the pie. So the other question is going to be, would it be Big Ten or SEC that we could see Clemson and Florida State in? I think it has to be the SEC. Of course, the SEC and the Big Ten, they're not going to come out and say that they want these schools right now, especially, due to the legality and what's going on publicly between Florida State, Clemson, and the Atlantic Coast Conference. But nonetheless, like I've said before, and like others have said before as well, if you're the SEC, you don't, and I repeat, you do not want the Big Ten planting a flag in your backyard. So if Florida State and Clemson want to leave like they do, you have no choice but to take them. Like I said, North Carolina and Virginia as well. That's too close to where the SEC is set up shop. So you would need to take them as well, and even possibly a Miami. And like I said, it's only a matter of time before we get to 20. Now, with that said, the ACC is teetering and they're taking on water right now. Will the Big 12 be able to keep everyone happy? That's going to be the other question. Uh, for now, I do believe they can because I look at the Big 12, and this is no disrespect to everybody that is still there. This Big 12, Brett Yarmark, he's tried to piece this thing together in a beneficial way for that conference. They're just attacking time zones. There's no semblance of order, if you will. And no disrespect to the Big 12, but once Texas and Oklahoma leave, it's going to be a conference full of teams that basically have not been good enough to get an invite from the Big Ten or the SEC. And I think, with that said, everybody there can work together. And I think if you're the Big 12 right now, you really don't have a problem being second or third fiddle to the Big Ten and the SEC. So I think the Big 12, in my opinion, is on more solid ground than the ACC right now. So the other question is going to be, what is next for college football? And like I keep on saying, uh, this thing is never going to stop because teams and schools rather are going to be seeking bigger paydays. We see what the Big Ten is getting from their television deal. We see what the SEC is getting from their football from their television deal. And yes, schools in the Big 12, yes, schools in the ACC are still getting a nice cut of television revenue, whether it be from the playoff or their television deals for their regular season games. But nonetheless, they're going to sit back and say, well, wait a minute, why is this conference getting more than me? Why are the teams, the lower tier teams in said conferences, getting more money than powerhouses like a Clemson, like a Florida State? And like I keep saying, this is the financial imbalance. This is what happens when you don't have revenue sharing. And once again, this is what happens when you don't have yourself a commissioner at the front of this thing trying to get ahead of this. So unfortunately, this is going to continue to be the same because as soon as the SEC gets a new deal, as soon as the Big Ten gets a new deal, everybody else is going to sit back and say, why not us? What about us? So Florida State is going to get their money by hook or crook. They're going to get out of the ACC, and the same thing can be said for Clemson. And I guarantee you, when they do, there's going to be other schools in the Atlantic Coast Conference trying to say, hey, you know what? It's time for us to exit stage right. I would not be surprised, okay, if, the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big Ten and the SEC rather just sit back and let this thing play out and let more schools from the ACC get on that Florida State Clemson bandwagon and try to get out of Dodge because they're going to look at the money aspect. Syracuse, it wouldn't surprise me, and I'm just throwing this out there, okay? It wouldn't surprise me to see a Syracuse say, you know what, this might be a sinking ship. Let's take our ball and let's go to the Big Ten. Okay, it's a possibility. Okay, don't think it can't happen. Don't think it can't happen. For Pitt as well, because they came into the ACC together, trying to get out of this thing. If this is indeed a sinking ship, like I foresee it, sometimes in life, you might be the last person to realize that you are in trouble, and by the time you realize it, it's too late. The ACC is in trouble. They're not going to admit it. They want to come out and say that everything is good, hunky dory, and they're on solid ground, but it ain't. And this is going to be a big shakeup, and it's going to be the tip of the iceberg, if you will, because like I said before, and I'm not trying to sound like a broken record, the Noles and the Tigers are not leaving this league on their own. So it's only a matter of time. Okay, before it does happen, it's not a matter of if, it's more like when. But things are about to be shaken up on the college football landscape once again. Let's just see whether it's the Big Ten or the SEC that will welcome Florida State and Clemson with open arms. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.